Hello everyone, Reza here. Welcome to my channel. In this tutorial, we will cover the fundamentals of modular rigging in the latest version of Unreal Engine. This powerful feature enables you to easily drag and drop pre-made control elements directly onto your character using visual rigging. You can build and connect these modules entirely in the viewport with the help of the schematic overlay. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a strong foundation to start using the Modular Rig feature in Unreal Engine. So let's get started. For this demo, I'm using the vehicle game asset by Epic. Since the asset isn't compatible with the version I'm using, 5.5, I added to my library and manually migrated the assets. Just a side note, if you're manually migrating older assets instead of doing it within the engine, be extra cautious about missing components, missing blueprint classes, so on and so forth. In this particular case, everything worked just fine. Now, I've noticed that many online tutorials jump straight into adding modules on the skeletal mesh without much preparation. Personally, I recommend planning your approach first. And here is what I suggest. Locate and find your skeletal mesh, double-click on it, and open it on the side. Inspect the skeleton first. I cannot stress that enough. You have skeleton tree panel open on the side always. That's part of the default UI. Go through the skeleton. I've got individual joints for antenna. I've got 4 joints, back left, back right, front left, and front right joints for suspension. So this tells me that I can create controls for suspensions. Then I have 4 joints for wheels, back left, right, front left, and right. And that also tells me that I can create controls for those as well. And that is it. So consider the number of individuals or combined meshes in the skeletal mesh as well. That's another thing. And the reason you need to inspect that is to find any limitations imposed by how the skeleton was designed for your mesh. So that's that. The second one, which is more of a side note, is you need to understand rigging basics. A little bit of rigging knowledge is essential. You always need to know how to work with your hierarchy effectively in case if you want to put all these wheels to work autonomously, if you want the suspension setup to work separately for you, and if you want the whole skeletal mesh to be moved by one control in case if you want to sort of animate that in the sequencer as well. These are all the things that without knowing knowledge in hierarchy in rigging, you won't be able to do that. You will run into errors and that's going to burn your valuable time. Okay, with that preparation in mind, let's start by focusing on the skeletal rig and explore where the next step is. Just a tiny disclaimer, if you notice a lag in the way that I navigate through menus is because I'm running a simulation behind the scene. I'm too far gone, I can't really stop that anymore, so apologies in advance if the UI and demo is a little bit laggy. Hopefully it's not going to create too much of a problem. Okay, first things first, you need to locate your skeletal mesh and you need to include that into a modular rig. There are 2 ways of doing that. The first way is to, within the content browser, right-click, go into Animation, go into Control Rig, and Control Rig, find the Modular Rig here, and create that blueprint, and include your skeletal mesh into that, which is fairly straightforward. The one that I always use is to right click on my skeletal mesh, go into create, go into modular rig, and it's going to include that rig for you. So I just did that and it gave me this guy, named it modular rig, right? I can just zoom into it. You can see the type of the blueprint is called modular rig. And if you double click on it, you go here. Right off the bat, let's talk about the interface. All the modules that you are going to assign to your joints, you can find them here. Right now, they are just super small, so I'm going to increase its size. Then you have your module hierarchy, which is extremely important. What Unreal Engine does is it's going to look for your root joints. If I look at my right-hand side, I've got rig hierarchy open. Make sure that is open because we are going to work with that a lot. And you can see I've got root joints and all the joints are here in white. And then we have some blue ones in here ending with the word socket. So sockets will attach themselves to the end of each bone, the joints. So it's like a container that you can drag and drop your module assets onto your sockets. You cannot drag and drop modules directly to the bones. You need to create sockets. Now these modules, once they added, they come here. Module hierarchy, and the word hierarchy, I cannot stress that enough. We are going to work with that as well. Now the first one you get for free, the one that is in here, and it automatically, whether you're doing hard surface or organic character, you're going to get one root module. And within that module, you have 3 controls. If I zoom in, you get the global, you get the body, and you get the root. Now for humanoid character, that might be slightly different. It's an automated process, but more or less you are going to get a bunch of controls. Right now I can see them: global, root, body. Body and root are not connected to anything. Global is the parent of the two. And because a module has been assigned to it, I see it here. This module is now connected to the root joint. And that's why we're seeing this blue guy here saying that there is a socket, a module has been assigned to that socket. The name of that module is root. Hope that makes sense. Every time you want to change the attribute of the modules, you select it and you go into details. And you have all the properties that you need to change. You really don't change the attributes of the controls. If I click on them, you can see perhaps 90% of these are locked. There are scenarios where you go and overwrite some of these, but for the most part, if you're starting as a beginner and you have no knowledge, existing knowledge in modular rigging, I suggest to stay away from it and do everything on the module page, not the control level. This root includes all the attributes that are locked at the moment. So if I want to, let's say, change the orientation of this root, obviously the car is moving forward this way, not this way. Basically, that's a cosmetic change, but well, let's fix it. You select the root. We have root control settings, global control settings, body offset control settings. And now hopefully we know that what they mean. Global, root, body offset, global, root, body offset. So this little guy, the arrow, is the root. So I need to go into root control settings, expand that. I can make it visible or invisible. And in here, in transform, all I need to do, instead of 180 degrees in Z, I'm just going to do 90. Simple as that. So that's how you change the translation or the location of your controls. Now, with that said, There are times when you don't have this root in there. It's not likely for you to run into this issue too often, but if that is the case and you don't have this root, go ahead and create it manually. Simply in the module pane, module hierarchy, right click, go to name, create a new module, and then you get all classes, type in root, go ahead and create that. Right now it's not connected to anything, but you can always go in there, select your root joint and say, I want this module to be connected to my root joint. And then you go, you selected, and you have another root joint, which obviously I don't need. And that automatically is going to create these controls for you. And I have a bit of a duplication happening here. Right click, delete. Hope that makes sense. All right, that's just about it with the introduction of module assets and modular rigging user interface. Let's go to the next chapter and start using these module assets library. Now let's do the fun part, dragging and dropping module assets into our sockets, and sockets are attached to our bones. Now, before I do that, I'm going blind here, so I'm going to go into thumbnail size and increase its size to medium. That is much better. Also, I'm going to go into root, details, and check my rotation order, because I'm working with a car is a very specific movement on vehicles as opposed to human body, and that's why I need to always check that. Preferred rotation order is set to Y, Z, X, and it works really well actually, because Y is the yaw, so this has to be the first one, and then we have roll represented by Z and pitch represented by X. And for pitch, cars rarely pitch drastically, tilting forward, backward, so I don't mind having that. But in case if you want to override it, you need to tick this box. Right now, use preferred rotation override is off, so you need to activate it and go ahead and change your rotation order if you want. Okay, with that said, let's go into these guys, these four, and see how we can add a module to our sockets. So for wheels, we have actually a preset socket called wheel. I'm going to drag and drop the first one, make sure the text appears, otherwise you're dropping it into the void. The first module has been created. Right click or F2 to rename. F2 is not working for me for whatever reason. F_R, front right. Perfect. It's connected to the connector FR wheel joint, and you can see FR wheel joint, I have the wheel in here. Now, very, very important, I need you to pay close attention to another guy that's just appeared, and it's into front left by the look of it that it's going to, and that is direction giver. Now, a direction giver socket serves as a control mechanism that guides the orientation or alignment of your rig component, such as bone, control curves, or even animation handles if you have any. For humanoid character, it might be a good idea to use that at join intersections. So when we use that for joints, there are places to define the primary axis for the movement of that guy, like forward direction for a limb. For cars, there are two ways to approach this. You can literally drag and drop that and put it right next to the front wheel, so they work together, they belong together, or there are cases where you use root for all of that. So it is actually quite common to use direction givers and plug them into the root to define the base direction. Obviously, I've got the root joint here and everything is connected to the root joint. So in this particular example, I'm not going to go wrong by doing that. I can literally drag and drop, left click, hold, and drop it into the root node. And you can see, and now this root node or root joint is getting two entries. One connection is from the root module. The other connection is from the direction giver module. Okay, hope that makes sense. Let's continue with our work. We did front right. Let's do front left. So I'm going to drag and drop another one into front left. And you can see another direction giver module has been created for us. So right click, rename to F_L. So we know what we're dealing with. Again, be consistent. If you want to put these direction drivers accordingly into their own modules, do that. But if you want to put them in the root, which definitely works for this particular structure, based on your structure, your strategy might change. It also works as well. Now we took care of the front ones. Let's go and take care of the back ones. So let's take care of the back left, I believe. That is correct. BL, always check. Right click, rename BL. Perfect. Now all I need to do is just to find BL direction driver and drop it into the right location. And lucky last, this one. And let's do it quickly. That is perfect. Now I'm going to compile, I'm going to save, and you may say, where are these controls? After all, we created these modules or plugged them to their sockets to have the controls. Were two problems. First problem, they're too small and they're inside the geometry. And even if we forget about the first problem, the second problem is the orientations are wrong. So I'm going to go into wireframe, and if I zoom in, you can see them, cheeky little guys. So let's select them. Remember, we don't edit over the control, we always edit over the module. So I'm going to go into details and axis, set it to Y, and radius, set it to maybe 14. Let's see. Yeah, that should work. I'm going to do Alt 4, and yeah, that works. That definitely works. Let's quickly go over the rest of them and fix them as well. Perfect. Now I have these two ready to go. Let's take them for a spin. So if I go ahead and select all four, hopefully I should be able to rotate them together. Yes, indeed. And if I select an individual one, that one also works. Perfect. So easy, super easy. You just need to have that first time exposure, and you can definitely switch to autopilot on this one. Now, the issue might be the hierarchy and the parenting within the hierarchy. You can see all of these guys are sort of orphan. You can see that the parent control is not connected, and because of that we get a white color for these controls. Every time you get white color, that is red flag. It means that it's not in the right hierarchy. The modular rig blueprint doesn't identify these as left and right within this hierarchy because they're outside. Now, first thing you need to do, you need to parent your individual modules into the root. And it's going to give them color. It's going to identify left and right. The way you do that is fairly easy. Left click, drag and drop, and you can see immediately this side is now blue. At least for cars, we don't have left and right, we have front and back. So you can see the front one gets blue. If I pick another front one, let's say front L left, and drag and drop, this is also going to be blue. And for the rear ones or the back ones, it's going to be red. So drag and drop, red, drag and drop, red. But they're not still connected to anything. As you can see, we still have these modules as orphan without being connected to our control hierarchy. And that's the part that you need to make a decision on, whether you would like to have them as part of your body, root, or global. In this particular example, I'm going to parent all of these 4 into the global. I can assign the controls for the wheel to the global and assign the controls for the suspensions to the root. Obviously, that's your choice based on what you want to do. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this guy and drag and drop it into the global. And look what happens. This is front. So I'm going to find front. The parent control right now is set to none. As soon as I drag and drop that into the global, this parent control submodule is gone. So I'm going to do that for the rest of them. This one to global, this one to global, and this one to global. So you can see all of these 4 modules, the parent controls, are now under the global. Every now and then, just move your vehicle, make sure everything follows along, nothing stays behind. If that happens, it's due to the hierarchy. And that's why I said at the beginning of the tutorial that you kind of need to have a base knowledge of that. It's going to be super helpful. Now we understand the basics, and I was intentionally a bit slow on this. Let's go to the next chapter and take care of the suspensions. But this time I'm going to speed up the video and I'm just going to readjust the suspensions. If I type in sus, suspension comes up and that goes to these 4 guys. I'm going to parent that to the root control and we take it from there. Let's go to the next chapter. So as you can see, all the modules are now under the root and my parents are under the root control. So if I select that little guy, the root control here, and go up and down with modules, you can see it's going to move all of them all at once. If I just go underneath, you can see that's going to do that for us. And as for the individual ones, we should get a little bit of movement here and there, which is good. That has to be very subtle. You don't want to really push it dramatically up and down. That amount of movement should suffice. Okay, that's done. With that out of the way, let's quickly take care of the antenna. Obviously, as I said before, physics have been applied to this antenna, but if you wish to rig that as well, you certainly can. So for this one, I can definitely use a chain. That's a good one. So I drag and drop chain in here, and it's going to create the chain module, applies it to the antenna. If I look at my antenna socket, you can see that I have the chain primary module assigned to joint 1. Obviously, we have 2 and 3 as well underneath that. But the way that chain works is actually pretty cool. So first things first, I want to make sure that it's part of the route, which by the look of it, it is. And if I go and select the module, not the control, and perhaps zoom in, you can see these guys. Now, I'm using this as a learning opportunity. We don't really need to do that since physics is taking care of this. But in case if you wish to change the type of your control curve, the look of your control curve, you can also do that on the module itself. So select the module from the module hierarchy, go to its details on the right hand side, and find or locate shape rollout. And that gives you the name of this control. You may say, Reza, how can we change that? Well, if you know the name, you can just type it in here. These guys called circle thick. So I can just go in there to circle thick instead of sphere thick. So I'm just going to type in circle, and immediately that look changes to circle. So and that applies to all of them, not just one. And in here I can go ahead and resize this guy. Oh, 5 is perhaps too big. Maybe 1. Yeah, 1 should do the trick. And the orientation is wrong, so let's fix that. There you go. And that is going to create that for you. You can see another one is already in place. So I can select this one, and I can select this one, and I can just rotate both of them at the same time. And if I want to apply keyframe, I sure can. Now, you may say, Reza, how did you know about the name? How did you know that you need to put in circle? Well, there is a library that you can find in the engine, the content drawer, but the easiest way to locate all of them and get to know their look and their shape, in case if you want to change them, you can always go to the class settings, and under shape, this guy is in charge of all the controllers. You can actually look it up. As you can see, if I go all the way up, it's under engine, plugin, really hard to locate, and inside control rig content, controls. So if I double click on it, it reveals all the 50 something, 54 controllers that is available to you. You can actually locate individual one of them, double click and have a look and understand and get to know their names and make use of them if you want. So all you need to do is just to pick the name and apply that into your shape name here. Just plug that here. Okay, so very briefly, that's how you rig a car using a modular rigging. Now you can see the hierarchy is clean. I have no orphan nodes to worry about. I can just compile and save, which I recommend you do every time you add a socket. And all sockets, there is no error in them. It's all good. You can now just go in there. I'm going to go into cinematic and go into level sequencer and create an LS modular ls modular rig test, really doesn't matter. Bring the skeletal mesh in, and now you can simply go in here, apply your control rig, which was SK buggy vehicle control rig, and you switch to the animation mode, and it's all ready to go. From this point onward, you can just start animating whatever you want. You can keyframe all of these guys now. You can keyframe the global, you can keyframe the root, you can keyframe the suspensions. I've got the body offset, remember the one in the middle, you can keyframe that, the antenna and front wheels. You have also control over the overall transform of your skeletal mesh as well, and you can go in there, change their translation, location, scale, keyframe them, and continue with your animation. That really should do it for this particular tutorial. We barely scratched the surface, but I hope this demo served as a good solid starting point for you to now dive in, explore, and make use of this incredible tool inside Unreal Engine. Thanks very much for your ongoing support. Until the next video, see you all later.